And this is like a setup for the Passion narratives. Just like in later on, the Jews want to kill Jesus and they want to destroy him and destroy his message all the way through. The Gentiles love him. And those fellows who are following a star from the east, notice that they stop off the star that they're able to follow, the magic star, or GPS, stops off in Herod's palace. And they ask, where is the Messiah supposed to be born? The Jews tell them Bethlehem, based on a flawed verse, because it's a made-up story.
Welcome to TaNaCh Talk. I'm your host, William Hall, broadcasting live out of Kingsland, Texas, USA, with another episode of Rabbi Tovia Singers. Let's get biblical Q&A. Come to you from the Holy Land. Rabbi, our sweet Rabbi Tovia Singer, welcome back. How are you today?
Big pleasure to have me. I'm doing great, feeling well, and winter's here. Jerusalem has mild winters. Mm-hmm. Jerusalem has very temperate, has temperate weather, so but it can be rainy, a little windy.
Gotcha,
so,
but not very cold.
Not really, no, and no. I have such a crazy head, and that's why when the Romans crucified people, it took them a long time to die, because the weather is so moderate, is so temperate. It doesn't usually get very hot or very cold. How that came in, I have no idea. It just flew in the conversation. But no, but we actually, unlike in the United States, where rain probably is unwelcome because it interferes with the daily routine, here, this country really depends on rain, and the weather report very frequently in Israel is accompanied with the information of how well the reservoirs are doing to capacity. So that's a very big deal here. So people are happy when it rains here.
That's cool. Weather here was amazing. For about a week and a half, we had like 70-degree weather just last week, and then all of a sudden, overnight, the next morning, it was like freezing outside. Reminded me of my crazy ex-wife.
Yeah, we all wonder about Texas weather and so on. So I'm glad you updated us on that.
Well, you should. We are the biggest state.
Yeah, every day I wonder what's going on there in the middle of nowhere, because you have all your chickens and your turkeys and donkeys, and everyone's wondering how the farm animals doing. So we're very grateful, and the outhouses are doing nicely. And I understand soon they're going to be hooking you up with electricity, which is really nice. So we're all looking forward to that.
That's funny. I'm surprised to see how many people actually live in Alaska actually do deal with those sort of things on a daily basis. That's great.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's get rocking and rolling then. We'll kick this show off with
Absolutely. Let's do that.
With our first question. Here we go. Let me turn this back up.
Hi, my name is Janet. I'm calling from Southern California. My question is, as far as the supposed New Testament goes, do you feel that these writers felt compelled or coerced into writing and therefore deliberately made false statements so as to warn the reader? Just curious to know, because if they were under the Roman authority, they might have. Just curious. Thank you. Bye.
Is she kind of referring to like where it says like give to Caesar what is Caesar's, those sort of things? Is that what she's referring to, I wonder?
I think I kind of hear two questions there.
Okay.
So I hear two questions. I hear the possibility that the writers of the New Testament were, after all, writing somewhere in the Roman Empire, and they did not want to offend the empire. So they no doubt, and they did, write in a way that would exonerate Rome for any culpability for Jesus's crucifixion, and hold the Jews uniquely responsible for the execution of Jesus. And I've talked about this quite a bit, and I discuss it in volume 1 of Let's Get Biblical, that we can actually trace this by examining the Gospels, more specifically, the 4 passion narratives in the Christian Bible. And you could see that as we move from the earliest of the 4 Gospels chronologically, Mark the oldest, and Pontius Pilate is certainly not held accountable for Jesus' crucifixion. And the Jews are certainly the ones who are compelling Pontius Pilate or giving him good reason to I'm just going to do one thing. I know I'm interrupting myself, but as it turns out, in a very weird way, the phones are ringing here.
Okay, gotcha.
Okay, we're going to change that. And we're all good now. Okay. So we see that in all the Gospels, the Jews are responsible, but the level of responsibility increases for the Jews. The guilt of the Jews increases exponentially. And conversely, the Pontius Pilate is increasingly exonerated. So there's one example. By the time we get to Matthew, the anti-Semitism in chapter 27, the Passion narrative, the Jews openly state that we take his blood upon ourselves and our children forever, and therefore Jesus should be crucified. And Pontius Pilate wants no part of it, and he washes his hands of it. And in Matthew chapter 27, we're introduced to the wife of Pontius Pilate, who also thinks that Jesus is innocent and has a dream telling her that Rome is about to crucify an innocent man. So she and her husband are both protesting for the innocence of Jesus. By the time we come to the book of John, there's a conversation in chapter 19, and that's the Passion narrative. And there you have Jesus having a very lucid, in-depth conversation with Pontius Pilate. There's no parallel to it. And in it, Jesus engages in a short dissertation with Pontius Pilate, assuring him that he is not guilty of any of this, and it was those who gave me over to you, it is their sins that is greatest. So you can very easily trace the anti-Semitism in the Passion narratives, and of course the Rome is exonerated to the point that if you read the Passion narrative in John, Pontius Pilate gives Jesus over to them, meaning gives them over to the Jews. So, and as many people notice, render unto Caesar what's Caesar's. Here's another example. Rome is exonerated. It should not surprise any viewer that there are sects of the Christian religion, an Ethiopian sect of Christianity, an Orthodox, this is not fringe, that holds that Pontius Pilate himself was a saint. Some think he committed suicide, just part of their tradition. So that's how far it goes. And moreover, you see in Paul's letters that that the Roman Empire is there because God wanted it there. And if you rebel against the empire, you're rebelling against God. And therefore, Paul says that you should fully submit to the empire, not for pragmatic reasons, but because God wanted Rome there. And if you rebel against Rome, you're rebelling against God, which is mind-blowing. According to the book of Acts, Paul was a citizen of Rome. I don't know if that's true. Paul doesn't make such a claim in his own letters, but it's very clear that the church is doing everything it can to appease Rome and to hold the Jews uniquely culpable for Jesus' crucifixion. The only book in the Christian Bible that does not support Rome, that is anti-Rome, is the book of Revelation. So 26 of the 27 books are definitely very pro-Roman, for sure. I heard another question in there, which you alluded to the question of whether the authors of the Christian Bible made so many flagrant mistakes that perhaps this was a dog whistle so that Jews would avoid it. Which is a very interesting question. I don't know the answer to that question, but I've thought about it a lot. The mistakes that you find everywhere in the Christian Bible, the outrageous mistakes. I mean, the New Testament is riddled with outrageous contradictions. It's not how many women came to the tomb Easter morning. Those are variants. They're not interesting. But the amount of abuse of the Hebrew Bible baked into the New Testament is so outrageous that one could argue, and people have speculated, that the authors of the Christian Bible were writing this under duress and therefore put dog whistles in there so that any person who had any knowledge at all of the Jewish scriptures would stay as far away from it as possible, because the amount of mistakes sometimes can't be explained. It's almost like they were trying to make mistakes at every turn. There's almost nothing that is just smooth. I certainly don't know the answer to that question. I certainly think about that a lot, because there are just too many mistakes that are too outrageous, and some of them seem to be vestigial, completely unnecessary. Before we close, heading back to the earlier idea of the anti-Semitism pro-Roman, you even find more anti-Semitism in later Christian literature that did not make it into the canon, thankfully. Like the Gospel of Peter is even more anti-Semitic. And that's what you expect. The further you go into the 2nd century, the more anti-Semitism, the more vulgar the anti-Semitism is. There are people who speculate that, in fact, Rome concocted Christianity. There are people like that. It's a claim which I think is just enormous. I used to ignore it completely, and now I think about it a lot and take it seriously. The amount of evidence you would need for that would be astounding, but it's absolutely intriguing. Anyways, thank you so much for your question.
Very good. I've heard a similar thing about Paul, that Paul invented Christianity to lead the Christians away from Judaism or to keep them separate. It's kind of
Right. So that would not be Paul. Paul was a Joseph Smith character. He wasn't a good guy, and he wasn't trying to. It's Peter where there's such a legend.
Oh, okay. Not Paul.
One of the things about Paul is when you read Paul, you know exactly what he's up to. It's the only books where the personality of the author really does come through. Paul was if you want to know what Paul was like, he was very much like Joseph Smith, a 19th century prophet, very similar kind of guy, motivated in different but similar ways, Paro and so on. So, yeah.
Interesting. Very good. All right, we'll move right on into this next caller. Caller, you're live on the air. Please tell us your name, where you're calling from.
Hi.
Would you do me a favor and hang on to it? Go ahead and turn your computer down if you don't mind. Okay, 1 second. Caller, sit tight. I'll be right back with you. Okay, so let me get back to the caller. Okay,
And
so
my question.
Go ahead, Patricia. Welcome back. Sorry.
Okay. Hi, this is Amani calling from Tennessee, and calling from Tennessee. And I had a question. I have a lot of Christian friends that tell me that 1 Samuel chapter 8 was basically God condemning Israel for wanting a earthly king, but they basically I see Deuteronomy 17, and I was wondering why that's like that. Or did Christianity pick that up from Roman beliefs that you couldn't have an earthly king or it'd be like an offense to Jupiter?
So thank you very much for your question.
Okay, hey, go ahead and hang up now until you for answer. Thank you for calling. Go ahead.
So this is the kind of question, the level of this question is in the genius area. This is a brilliant question, and we get maybe one question of this caliber maybe once a month. It's absolutely brilliant. So let's dial back to where we find a commandment to have a king, and you'll see how odd it is when, as you said, we would go back to Deuteronomy chapter 17. So we're going to do that now so we get an understanding of this. So the Torah says, when you come, it's a very famous mitzvah in the Torah. Ki sovei el ha'aretz asher Hashem Elokecha noisin lecha v'yishav v'yishavta bo, and when you come to land, to the Holy Land that you will inherit and dwell there, v'amarta, and you will say, Deuteronomy 17, verse 14, pay very careful attention. This is like mind-blowing. The Torah says, v'amarta, and you will say, asimu olai melech k'chol hagoyim asher srivoisov. The Torah says that you'll come into the land, you'll say, let us have a king like all the other nations. This is what the Jews might say. So the Torah goes on, sois tosis olecho melech, so you should surely put a king upon you, asher yivcha Hashem elokecha boy. And of course, there are limitations. It has to be mikar v'achecha, it has to be a fellow Jew. And then the Torah tells us it can't be a non-Jew, it has to be your own brother. And then there are many laws associated with the king. If you don't think that's a strange passage, and I don't know what isn't, do you, the viewer, understand? And there are many people watching me now, listening to my voice, who are very familiar with this passage. This is the passage where the Torah gives us a mitzvah that to have a king. But look at the weird language. Torah says, when you come into the land that you will inherit, and you're going to say, Asima olai melech k'chol hagoyim asher srivoisoi, place upon us a king. So like the Gentile, I'm putting the word Gentile, they're like the other nations that are in our midst. There it says you should surely give him a king. Why is this so wild? What kind of wording is this? What does it mean? What is that modifier there? Why is it adding in the text that they will say, let us have a king like all the other nations of the world? What does like all the other nations of the world have to do with anything? Why don't you say, if you want a king, we'll give you a king. Or you should have a king. What did it say? The Jews will say, and then God will give. Well, there's like no other mitzvah like that. Jews will say, we want to eat kosher, so like there's no other mitzvah like that. And why are the Jews inserting the words that we want to be like all the other nations in having a king? This is a very tricky piece. This is a piece that people read over their entire lives and don't even think about it. Because the children of Israel are supposed to be separate and are supposed to not go in the ways and follow the mores of the nations of the world. We're not supposed to imitate them. Don't follow the ways of the nations. So what is this? Now, you could be sure that Shmuel Hanavi was very, very worried about this. That shouldn't be a question. So what heck is going on? What kind of languages? And why was Shmuel very concerned? Samuel, who was the last judge who was going to anoint the first king. Do you understand the magnitude of this question? Do you have any clue of the enormity of this problem? We want a king like the other nations, so you should surely put a king. Why don't you say there's a mitzvah in the Torah to have a king, go have a king? You ever think about that? It's mind-blowing. So the answer is unbelievable. If the Jewish people say, give us a king like the other nations, why is it there like the other nations? So if the children of Israel ever give the reason for having a king, because we want to imitate the ways of the nations, that means that the Jews are spiritually ill. I'm not kidding. And that's why the Torah goes out of its way. You better get them a king, because they're in big trouble, because they're looking to imitate the nations of the world. And we need not any king, but we need someone who can really be a spiritual leader. You see, it's brilliantly built into it. Having a king like the other nations is really a problem. It's really a problem because what are you doing trying to emulate the other nations of the world? That in itself demonstrates that there's a problem. You want to dress like the nations of the world? There's something wrong with you. You need help, right? That's a symptom of a spiritual disease. So the Torah says, okay, you're basically advertising that you're in a lot of trouble. Moreover, if you need more reassurance, we have the book of Judges. The book of Judges that precedes Samuel, in fact, Samuel's the last of the judges, one can say is completely devoted to showing the children of Israel why they're a mess. Moreover, there are a whole series of shocking problems over the course of many years. Do not think, if you read Samuel, do not think that the Jews are just engaged in craziness constantly. The book of Judges takes place over the course of many, many centuries, and TaNaCh highlights, or this book, Judges, highlights only the crises, only the things that are going wrong, only the plane crashes, right? So to be very, very aware of that. So it's TaNaCh is very skewed to only talk about planes that crash, not those that take off and land safely. All right. So because the book of the Bible is devoted to making you a better person. It's not a history book. And in fact, how does the book of Judges end? The book of Judges ends following a crazy civil war in which the tribe of Benjamin is nearly eviscerated through war. And ultimately it ends saying that everybody did whatever they want, because prior to the period, the epoch of kings, there was a leadership that was called judges. In this case, judges doesn't mean what you think, like someone sitting in a courtroom. Rather, it was a loose confederacy of all the tribes, and there was a central authority, but that central authority, the judge, did not have anywhere near the authority of an actual king, of an actual monarch. So understand that wanting a king and needing a king was not a demonstration of the spiritual health of the children of Israel, and you can see, but rather they were nebuch sick. So if somebody, it's like saying, if somebody has a temperature of 103, you should surely get that person a doctor, right? It means you're ill. So having a king, having a central authority who is among your brethren, and the Torah warns us there are certain limitations on the king. He can't have many horses, many wives, much money. Can't do those things because it will distract him. What will distract him? Because the whole reason he's there is to be both a leader spiritually and physically. Did every king rise to the occasion? Absolutely not. And we're told that in the 2 Samuel, that there'll be kings who might fail, but the Davidic dynasty is locked up. So that now you understand why Samuel would be sullen at the notion, because it means that you're coughing up blood. We need a doctor. But in fact, the Jewish people desperately needed a central authority. And you could see that baked ensconced in the very mitzvah in the Torah, Deuteronomy chapter 17, where the Jews are going to say, look, we want to be like the Goyim. We want to be like the nations. Oh, you want to be like the nations? You want to imitate Hollywood? You want to imitate Rome? You want to imitate the south of France? You want to act like Belgium? You want to behave like London and Manchester? So you need a psychiatrist, meaning you need a king, you need a proper king, you need a proper leader who's going to get you out of trouble. It means you're advertising that you're in big, big trouble. Now you understand why it was disconcerting. Hashem, of course, wants the Jewish people to be healthy and to have a proper king and so on. So he's going to have a nice talk with Shmuel Hanavi. But you have to read that very carefully in context, and then you can grasp the role of the king. The role of the king is to be a spiritual leader, to be a nasi, to guide the nation properly. Some kings failed at that task, and that was a very big problem. Thank you for that really brilliant and incisive question.
Awesome. Okay, moving into the next caller. Caller, you are live on the air. Please tell us your name. Caller, you're live on the air. Please tell us your name, where you're calling from.
I'm Jeffrey Knox, calling from Ohio.
Welcome, Jeffrey. Go ahead with your call. What's your question?
Well, so my question has to do with Matthew 2:3. It says that King Herod, along with all of Jerusalem, were troubled, hearing the news that the Messiah was born. And it doesn't make sense. It makes sense to me that King Herod would be upset because he's not a Davidic king. But all of Jerusalem being upset, especially with Bar Kokhba, it seems like it disproves it right there.
I was doing great, and then you sort of took a left turn. I didn't know how did Bar Kokhba get into that?
Because people even Rabbi Akiva thought that he could have been the Messiah until he died. So it shows that the Jews at the time were willing to accept the Messiah. They wouldn't be troubled that the Messiah was born.
Okay, all right. That's a great question.
Okay, go ahead and hand that to
you
you
for your
answer.
question.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
This is a very, very good question. Why would, this is the infancy narrative in Matthew. Why would Matthew's infancy narrative portray Herod as worried, and all of Jerusalem also found the whole notion that the King of the Jews was born in Bethlehem? Like, why would that be? So you'll start to taste where this is going. So Herod, the king of the Jews, he wasn't really a Jew, he's an Edomite, but he was a puppet, for Rome. And Jerusalem, meaning the Jews, everyone was worried about this whole notion. Okay, why would that be? Why would that be in the story? Okay. Tell me this, my friend. That's how Jews react to the notion that the Messiah was born in Bethlehem, right? Okay. How did Gentiles, in Matthew's view, respond to the idea that the King of the Jews, the Messiah, was born? Like Herod and the rest of Jerusalem, or differently? The answer is very differently. Whereas Herod and the Jews found it very disconcerting because they are, and this is like a setup for the Passion narratives, just like later on, the Jews want to kill Jesus and they want to destroy him and destroy his message all the way through. The Gentiles love him and they worship him. And those fellows who were following a star from the east, notice that they stop off the star that they're able to follow, the magic star, or GPS, stops off in Herod's palace. That's the context there. And they inquire, where is the Messiah supposed to be born? The Jews tell them Bethlehem, based on a flawed verse, because it's a made-up story. And these people, who I presume are from Persia, that's how the story is set. They go off to Bethlehem. The star continues Bethlehem and stops over the home of Jesus, right? No barn in Matthew. And they worship the newborn baby Jesus. And what does Herod do? He seeks to kill the kid. And in fact, he kills he orders that every child born in Bethlehem should be executed, right? Every baby boy under the age of 2 is executed. Well, that's quite striking. So what do we have here? The Gentiles love Jesus and the Jews hate him. And the King of the Jews hates him. Don't you get what's going on? So this is a setup. It's a setup for how blind the Jews are. Matthew is a rather late book in the Christian canon, probably authored in the 80s. But we can go to the earliest book, the earliest surviving literature in the Christian canon, 1 Thessalonians, no doubt from the hand of Paul, chapter 2, verse 14 through 16, which holds the Jews uniquely accountable for Jesus' death. We can go to the Passion narratives, Matthew 27, 25. The Jews say, we take his death upon ourselves and our children. What's going on here? So Matthew 2, this is the second chapter of the infancy narrative, is a setup. And the setup is that the Jews hate Jesus. They're enemies of God. and consistently reject him, although the message was sent to them, Matthew chapter 10, and ultimately, just like they reject him as just a baby. You know how this plays to the Christian mind? You know, little Christian children read these stories. They're very easy to read. They read well. This is not like trying to make sense out of Romans 11. This is very easy to read. So this is showing that the Jews are the enemies of God. I mean, this is why Christians curse me all day. Why do they curse me? Because they read this literature. Could you imagine the pent-up anger that Christians have? All their lives they're reading these wonderful stories, and there's a pent-up anger in their heart against the Jew. Many of them are told that you shouldn't hate Jews, but it's burning in them. Look at these Jews, how they're behaving. No, the normal ones, I presume, who especially, hold back and don't say out loud what they're really thinking, or it's there, even if they're Christian Zionists. But that kinetic hatred is there. And then when they see me, a person who just is responding to the arguments that missionaries make, they explode with rage against me. Why are they so angry at me? Why not atheists? They're angry at me because there's all this pent-up rage. And Matthew 2 does nothing to alleviate that rage. And that's why it's Herod that's upset, it's Jerusalem that's upset, and ultimately Herod wants to kill the kid, and the child has to run off to Egypt with the family in Matthew 2:13-15 to escape the wrath of Herod. It's a nightmare. And in fact, when they return after Herod's death, they can't even go back to Judea. And Joseph is told, you got to go to Nazareth, which is in the Galilee, because you got another nut job, Herod Archelaus. So that's what Matthew 2 is like the book cover. The front of the book, the Jews reject Jesus and the Gentiles accept him. And the end of the book, the Jews reject Jesus and the Gentiles adore him. And how does Matthew end? It ends with the Great Commission. Go to all nations, right? And baptize them in the name of the Father. And all nations. The veil has been rent asunder, has been torn in half. What's that veil torn in half? It's not a historical story. The veil is the separation between Jew and Gentile. But the book of Matthew is a story about how initially Jesus came for the Jews. The Jews wanted nothing to do with it because they're accursed, because they're enemies of God. They always will be enemies of God. And now the message of Jesus is to everyone. Now you understand that all these Christian anti-Semites are not crazy. I understand them completely. In fact, that Christians their anti-Semitism is limited, but they just occasionally want to kill us, is, I think, to their credit, given the screed that they read. And that's why pastors and preachers get up on their pulpits in the United States and in Europe and talk about how the Jews are engaging in conspiracies constantly. Where do they get it from? And why do their parishioners receive these beautiful messages so willingly? Because it comports perfectly with the gospel portrayal of the demonic Jew. This is what the Jewish people are up to. This is what we're up against. There's a day coming when the Gentiles will come to us. 10 will grab the shirt of the Jew and say, take us with you, because now we know that God is with you. Zechariah 8:23. Thank you so much for your question.
Yeah, very good. Very good. Okay, we'll move right on into the next caller. Caller, you're live on the air. Please tell us your name and where you're calling from. Turn your computer down first, if you don't mind.
My dear friends, hope this message finds you well. If you like the way this channel is going and the channel has been a blessing to you, please consider supporting the channel by going to the website, TaNaChTalk.com, TaNachTalk.com. Thank you once again for your time and for supporting TaNaCh Talk. Shalom.
Caller, you're live on the air. Please Tell us your name and where you're calling from.
Okay, this is Jonathan McCleary calling from Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Welcome back, Jonathan. Go ahead.
Okay, so my question is that I'm getting hit with questions from Christians and stuff, and I'm trying to show them that Jesus wasn't the sin offering. And in Ezekiel 45:22, we see that the prince, he brings a sin offering for himself and for the people. And as I'm reading in the commentaries that I bought, it says that the sages wanted to almost withdraw the book of Ezekiel out of circulation because the Torah mentions no such sin offering as is described here. And then it goes on to explain it a little bit. And I was just wanting to know if you could expound on that for me so I would have a knowledge to be able to precisely be able to answer questions and be able to, not like necessarily contradict, but lead them in the right direction.
Well, this just for a moment. Think. Use your head. What does the Talmud say that contradicts Ezekiel 45? Be very specific. That means, was there not a sin offering in Leviticus 4 for both the layperson and the leadership? So why should you worry about this? How does that contradict?
I think he said there was nothing in the Torah, not the oral law.
No. He said that there is very much in the Torah, Leviticus chapter 4. I think people become disconcerted when Christians raise issues that are non-issues. And what happens is that Christians, let me advise Christians for a moment. I want to talk to Christians. If you're a Jew or a Muslim or of no faith, turn off the show. All right. You could stay, but just listen in. I want to talk to Christians for a moment.
Color, you can go ahead and hang up now if you want to and tune in for your answer.
You can hang up.
All right, thank you.
You bet, thanks.
So I want to train you how to convert Jews to Christianity. This is a training. So if you're a Jew or a Muslim or an atheist, it's not for you. So I want to teach Christians how to do this. Don't ever try to convert Jewish people based on the Hebrew Bible, because it won't work. It'll fail. There's, contrary to what you've been told in your churches, that there are 365 prophecies all pointing to Jesus. There is arithmetic here, and the arithmetic is that 365 times 0 equals 0. Okay? So I want to teach you how to convert Jews to Christianity. Never use the Bible. Don't. Instead, what you do is scour the Talmud and Midrashic literature and try to find anything that can possibly be construed to bolster Christian claims. It doesn't make a difference if it's out of context. Now, I know there are many nice Christians listening to me now who are puzzled by this. But because I'm the chief missionary in the Western Hemisphere and the Eastern Hemisphere, I think I want to tell you that we don't care. We're just going to use the Talmud. Oh, I know it bothers you because we don't believe in the Talmud. So I want to say that to convert a Jew, it doesn't make a difference what you do. The goal is to convert Jews to Christianity. That's all. And if you need to use the Talmud, I know it bothers you because I told you yesterday that we don't believe in the Talmud. We don't believe in the authority of the Talmud. We believe only in sola scriptura. But the truth is, I hate to tell you this, Christians, that is, you can't use TaNaCh to support Christianity. And in fact, quite the contrary, you'll find that the prophecies baked into the Hebrew scriptures oppose all the teachings of the church. But don't worry. Just keep using the Talmud or quote conservative rabbis at Jewish Theological Seminary. What do you mean? Why would I quote a rabbi at Jewish Theological or JPS? Because we need to convert Jews to Christianity. It doesn't matter how you do it. In fact, Paul, the chief rabbi of Christianity, says to the Jew, become as a Jew to those who are under the law, even though I'm not under the law. I'll become like one who's under the law. If he's not under the law. So I want you to know, my fellow Christians who are now set to convert all Jews to Christianity, become a chameleon and use any method possible. The ends, in order to be a good Christian missionary, the ends always justify the means. So do anything you want to. Okay, so there's your end. So therefore, go ahead, use the Talmud, please. Okay. My sarcasm is not difficult to pick up, but that's exactly what's going on here. Christians make the case that we can prove that Jesus is the Messiah from the Hebrew Bible, from a plain reading of the Hebrew Bible. We then present them the Hebrew Bible, and all their arguments completely collapse. And then they start going on some sort of trip through the Talmud that they insist is not from God, it's demonic. And if what I'm saying to you makes you never heard it before, this is not the right show for you. If you think I'm mischaracterizing what missionaries routinely do, and this gentleman called in just to reflect that they're all quoting Talmudic literature, rabbinic literature. What does this have to do with anything? But I assure you, I want to assure all the Christian missionaries, your only hope to convert Jews, to baptize Jews, is to use the Talmud, to use rabbinic literature, to quote Reform rabbis from Hebrew Union College. I'm not kidding. It's the only way. The only way. You understand the crazy world that Christian missionaries thrive in? It's just straight, all this nonsense, all this white noise. It's all their smoke. These are all props. It's all smoke and mirrors. And I ask you the question, those who have seen either on YouTube or in person, you've seen magicians. Why do magicians use handkerchiefs? Why do they use smoke? Why do they go into a box, come out of a box? What do you need boxes for? Because I assure you that when you're watching a magic show, the laws of physics are not being suspended in your favor so that you are entertained. The laws of thermodynamics are intact. So the magician's stuck. What is he going to do? He can't cut ladies in half. He can't make things float. Can't, right? So what does he do? He has to use props. He has to deflect, distract, get you to look there, and meanwhile, the sleight of hand is here. That's what's going on in all missionary activity. It's a magic show. And just as magicians are not doing magic. Now, there is a unwritten contract between us and the entertainer that, go ahead, we know you're doing some trick, and you're not really doing magic. The laws of physics are not being suspended for the benefit of our brief entertainment, but it's fun. Okay. But these missionaries are claiming to really do magic. But how do they do it? What are the props that they're employing? It's all misdirection. The magician is getting you to look here, and it's here. The magician tells you to look at the Talmud. What does the Talmud have to do with anything? You don't believe the Talmud is the word of God. You told me not to believe it's the word of God. So what difference does it make a difference what the Talmud says? You understand? Listen up. You understand how this works? Now all the Jews and Muslims and atheists can join back. I just had to give that speech. That was a Christians only speech. So I want you guys to listen very carefully. In the Messianic age, because that's what's in view, really from going back to Ezekiel 34. I've told you this a number of times. The book of Ezekiel has 3 major sections. One of those sections is devoted to the Messianic age. It's Yemais HaMashiach, right? So in the Messianic age, use your brains. in the Messianic age, would we expect that the sacrificial system and many other rituals might be different in the future temple than it was in the first and second temple or in the tabernacle? The answer is yes. Why? Not because the Torah, chas v'chalila, heaven forbid, has been changed. That can never be. But the circumstances change, right? The ideas that Einstein advanced in the very early 20th century, he didn't prove or illustrate that Isaac Newton was wrong. He just explained things that Newton had no access to, that under different conditions, the laws, there are rules that we need to talk about, that there's no way that someone like Isaac Newton, who was one of the smartest people who ever lived, he never even thought about it. It's not that they're contradicting each other, just different circumstances. So use your head. In the Messianic age, what will not exist? Intentional sin, deliberate sin. There'll be no rebellion against Hashem. None. Right? So it's not like the law. Now, it's true that the question is raised among Jews, among rabbis, of why do the rituals in the temple, in the Messianic temple, why is there a very striking difference? Well, it's because it's a different circumstance. There won't be war. The Aron, the Ark, the Covenant, which contains the luchos, the tablets, will not be used because there's not going to be any more war. And that's why Jeremiah says earlier on, we won't even talk about the Aron Habris, the Ark of the Covenant. Why? Because there's no war anymore. So therefore, will missionaries who spit at and curse the Talmud every day, will they then not go and polish off the Talmud just to exploit its discussions, where every view, even dissenting views, which we don't hold by, but we find it we learn much from it. Just like if you're a scholar of law, let's say you're an American, and you study law, you not only study the Supreme Court decisions that are the majority, but scholars study the minority view that is not adopted. They want to see the insights, not only of what the 5 justices agreed on, but also what the dissenting justice, what that view was. Why? That's what scholars do, even though it went with the 5, not with the 4, but they want to find out what the limits are. So this is a scam. This is a prop. And I say to you who love Hashem, to not allow yourself to be distracted by these magicians. The only difference between a real magician and a missionary is the real magician concedes that it's sleight of hand. The missionary actually maintains that I'm really doing magic. The Talmud really matters, and it's a game. It's a scam. Ezekiel is a messianic temple, which means the nations of the world are not going to, all the enemies of God will be destroyed. That happens in Ezekiel 38 and 39. Intentional sin will come to an end. Rebellion will come to an end. All the nations will speak in a pure speech. So it's not that the law of Moshe Rabbeinu has changed. Now, it's true that back in history, there were some Jews who said, but this is different. It's true. That's not a consensus view, but people raised that issue. The answer is very simple. So warn missionaries, don't change the rules. You advertise this in the newspaper. The advertisement is, I can prove to you from the Bible that Jesus is the Messiah. Good. Don't start going to dissenting views of a Jew that's not the consensus to prove that Jesus is Messiah. Don't play games. I don't want to hear from Professor Summer. I don't want to hear from this Professor Siegel. I don't want to hear from any of these guys because that's not what you told me. And in truth, if you ordered something from a store and you received something else, you would ask for a refund and you would contact the Better Business Bureau. You would complain to Amazon if the merchant refused to give you a refund. I say to you, it's time to wake up. It's time to tell the missionaries, stop playing this game that you so frequently engage in. Thank you so much for your question.
1 second. Calls are getting busy here. Give me 1 second, Rabbi. I got to make sure I'm back at the right caller here. And we're good. Okay, good deal. Okay, caller, you are live on the air. Please tell us your name and where you're calling from.
Oh, William?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Is this Kirk?
Yeah. It's Kirk.
Kirk, my man, Gayton.
I'm
Now
calling from Graham, Texas, America. I'm doing great.
That's awesome.
Doing great.
That's awesome. Welcome to the show,
day.
my friend.
Enjoy. Thank you so much, brother.
Yes, sir.
Rabbi Tovia Singer, I've got this question with Malachi chapter 1, verse 11, and I was reading Rashi's commentary about it, and I was just wondering, you know, am I reading this right, that when somebody is offering an idolatrous sacrifice on an altar of idolatry, and in their hearts they're doing this so that they believe to be the creator, God accepts that from them? Can you help clarify that a little bit?
Is this kind of a way to really to kind of help justify certain, like a lot of Christians that we love who think they're serving God?
Yes.
Okay.
That's right.
Okay, very good.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Rabbi, you clear?
Yes.
Okay. Kirk, we'll talk to you soon, man. Give me a call this afternoon. We'll chat.
All right.
Okay.
Thank
See you.
Thank you, Rabbi. Bye-bye.
Okay. All right, Rabbi, go ahead.
Malachi is writing during a time of a temple, so this is not Gentiles offering sacrifices in Scandinavia. And in fact, in the very beginning of Malachi, we encounter a very strong criticism of the Jews versus the non-Jews. Malachi criticized the Jews. And look, in the prophets, we've talked about this many times, you have two major themes. One is excoriating criticism of the Jewish people. If the Jews did the right thing, the prophets are not interested. Why? They want to make you better. They want to make you healthy. They're not interested. The prophets, stepping into the prophets is stepping into a hospital. It's there to make you better. It's there also to tell you about the Messianic age, because to highlight how problematic it is that you're in such deplorable condition, because you've got to be a light to the nations and you're a mess. You're a mess. You're going to be in the Olympics and look at you. You're a pathetic nightmare. That's why the prophets are so critical. So if you just step back, and I will say this to you, I think that somewhere in the order of 90% of the questions asked of you, certainly as is reflected in the questions that come across this show, are questions that are very easily solved if you just read it in context. And in fact, the Talmud says if a heretic ever comes and weaponizes your Bible in order to convert you, always know the answer is close by. Just remember that, my holy brothers and sisters. And people have an aversion to reading texts. Malachi is always addressing an unasked question. Now, in this case, we already told that God is complaining about the behavior of Jews, the kind of offerings and sacrifices the non-Jews bring. These are good guys versus the Jews. And he says, you guys are pathetic. You guys bring me, you, the Jews, are bringing me animals, sickly animals that look like they belong in a nursing home. And look how nice the animals that non-Jews are bringing me. Healthy, nice. They're bringing me the best. You guys are really messing up. Now, one caveat is, when are non-Jews bring offerings? So I won't make this complicated because there's something very intriguing here. So Malachi is written during the Persian Empire, the time of the rebuilding of the temple. And he's telling us the way non-Jews are handling stuff as opposed to Jews. And you know who gets smacked up. The Jews do. Because he wants to make us better. You're bringing me an animal that looks like it's about to pass away, that's on one leg, and look what the nice animals that the Goyim are bringing me. The knowledgeable Jews will sniff this out because this is a time when vulgar idolatry was destroyed by the Great Assembly. So Goyim are bringing offerings. So those of you who, I'm not going into it because it's too complicated. So that's all. So the Goyim are bringing pure offering. That's all. That's all. And that's what this is. This is all an admonishment against the Jews who are just not living up to their status. Okay. So great question. Thank you very, very much.
All right. Very good. Moving into our next caller. Oh, they're still calling in. That's good. Let me make sure I get the right one again. 1 second. A lot of really good questions today. Where are we at? This is going to be caller number 6 right here, 6212. Bear with me. Here we go. Okay, caller, you're live on the air. Please tell us your name and where you're calling from.
Hello, this is Daniel from Michigan.
Welcome, Daniel. Welcome to the show.
Okay, William and Rabbi, I've been reading these passages for quite some time. I have to let Rabbi know that those books he wrote is amazing. It's even more amazing that Christianity still has a leg to stand on.
That's funny. Very true.
Yeah, it was a lot of things in those books, I mean, you wouldn't see firsthand, but he does expose them for a lot of fraud in those books. I'm just surprised that Christianity still has a leg to stand on.
And there's links to those books also in the video description area below. Get them there. It'll help me out a little bit. So, all right.
Yes, wonderful job with those books, Rabbi. Wonderful.
Thank you.
I love it.
Thank you.
Okay, so my question is, I'm reading these Gospels. It seems like Jesus seems to know everything leading up to his crucifix. But once he gets up there, he says these words, my God, why have you forsaken me? What went wrong at that point which will cause him to say that?
That's a great question.
Right.
Okay, Daniel, go ahead and hang up now. Rabbi, did you want to keep him on at all?
No, let's get rid of him. I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Daniel, go ahead and hang up now, brother, and tune in for your answer. Thank you, Rabbi. All right.
Okay.
All right. Great question. I love it.
So that's called the cry of dereliction, where Jesus screams out, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? And it is a quote from the book of Psalms, chapter 22. The author of the second gospel is seeking to show that Psalm 22 is a prophecy about Jesus. Now, of course, it isn't. Psalm 22 was authored by King David. We know it because we're told that. And King David is groaning in his own anguish. He really does feel forsaken. And I really implore people to read Psalm 22 from verse 1. And the author David asks the question. He says, I don't hear you. And maybe some of us can relate to that, where we pray to God and we're just wondering, is there someone listening to me right now? David HaMelech asks the question, when my ancestors asked you questions and supplicated to you, you responded, but I'm not hearing anything, right? And David had very serious problems in his life. If you think you have problems, David had enemies all about him that wanted to destroy him, and he cries about this. He uses the metaphor of wild animals. He doesn't start here, but he starts chapters earlier in describing his various enemies and how he felt completely abandoned. And David, the beautiful feature of these psalms is it explodes. You find what makes a great song fabulous. So a great song. Why are some songs just spectacular? So a great song draws you in and only delivers at the end, delivers that incredible solo. Really. The great music sort of draws you in. I'm not a musician, but this is how it works. The great songs draw you in, and you're anticipating something is coming. You want it so desperately, and you know it's going to come. And then it just delivers that relief at the very end. It just explodes. And all the great music does this. And TaNaCh does it as well. So all these chapters, Psalm 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, David HaMelech is crying out to God. So you know it's coming. You know the great solo is coming. And that's Psalm 23. The Lord is my shepherd. I don't want. I'm missing nothing, even though I'm walking in the valley of dark. Your staff and your rod comfort me. And that's the great psalm that everyone knows. Why? Lahavdil Elif Alfi Avdolas. It's like a beautiful piece of music. It's the resolution. It's like the resolution of Beethoven's Ninth Symphony in the fourth movement. It's all music, and it delivers that crazy solo that just go nuts. All the great songs of this, and all TaNaCh is like this. We're drawing you in. There's nothing to do with a future Messiah. This has to do with David. And David is saying that ultimately, you prepare my enemies before me. You are my source of comfort. What does the Christian Bible do? It takes these texts, what David HaMelech is speaking, King David speaking in the first person, about his own predicament. Would you want to have your best friends betray you? Your wife curse you? Your son wants to kill you? Your father-in-law wants to kill you? You think you got problems? You ain't got problems. King David had problems. King David had struggled, but ultimately, both your staff and your rod, both are my source of comfort. What does that mean? Both the staff that holds me up and the rod that beats me, they both are hemo yinachamuni. They are my source of comfort. So in the cry of dereliction of Matthew 15, verse 34, the author doesn't care that it doesn't make sense. It just feels good there because Mark, the author of the first gospel, is portraying Jesus as completely helpless on his way to the cross. And it doesn't matter if it contradicts something else. It just has to feel good then. It just has to give you the feel good at that moment. And if it contradicts everything else, if it contradicts that we are told that Jesus says that I'm going to have to suffer and die and many things and rise on the third. It doesn't matter. It just has to deliver the high there, and it has to feel good. And that's why when you listen to the testimonials of Christians who explain why they became Christians, they'll tell you that it feels good. It changed my life, and I don't do drugs anymore, because they traded in one kind of drug for another kind of drug. And you're right. In the cry of dereliction, in verse 34 of chapter 15 of Mark, my God, you could only imagine Jesus there on the cross. Why he feels alone. But what do you mean, why? Of course that's why. I'm here because, and in fact, this portrayal of Jesus in Mark's Passion narrative, while it shares many features with the other synoptic gospels in particular, it differs sharply from Luke as an example, where you don't have this, because in Luke's gospel, Jesus is much more strident, very much in control, and he knows exactly why he's there, and he's not screaming this kind of stuff on the cross at all. In fact, he's having nice conversations with the ladies as he's being taken off to be crucified. They're crying for, it's a totally different Jesus. They're crying for him, and he's saying to them, what are you weeping for me? Weep for yourself. You know what's about to happen to you. It's a total different story. So this is Mark's story, his passion narrative, and his passion narrative really has passion. There's pathos here. And that's attractive because the Christian could connect with that Jesus. It contradicts everything. It doesn't matter. It feels good now. Do you follow? And I know many people will be offended by this, but that Seinfeld, the main character in the sitcom, in his name, was asked, he was asked in one interview, it was a very successful show and everything, but the stories really don't make any sense at all. And Jerry responded, he said, we didn't care if it made sense. It just had to be funny. It had to ignite a comedy. And the fact that no two stories in an episode made any sense at all, and it was so ridiculous, it didn't make a difference. And that show was a very successful show because people suspended. All right, so the story is ridiculous. They didn't make sense. It didn't follow. It doesn't make a difference. It just is supposed to be funny at the moment. Mark's interest is showing that Jesus was a pathetic character who had really nothing to say when he was standing in front of Pontius Pilate. When he's asked about all these charges of him, he doesn't have this lucid conversation explaining. He said, you say it's su lege. He's quiet the whole way. He doesn't understand why this is happening to him. He's beside himself. It's really very different. And a question that I don't necessarily recommend unless there's a theological reason for it, but a question that I've asked Christians at the right time is this question, it's called the cry of dereliction. Was this a sincere question or not? It's a very important question, especially for modalists, especially people who belong to United Pentecostal. If the Sabellians, that means they believe that there's really no Trinity. Jesus, the Father, the Son is really the same thing, just in different modes. And in fact, Trinitarians say that, it's an egg has a shell. Why? So when Jesus asks the question, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? Did he mean it? Was he looking for it? Was it a sincere question or not? Christians don't know what to say to that. They'll give you all kinds of speeches, but if you ask a question, did he mean it? Did he not know why, or did he know why? Christians are going to have a lot of trouble answering that question. So it works there. Why? Because Jesus died for my sins. Look at this poor guy on the cross, dying, abandoned. I felt this is why Christianity works. This is why it delivers. It delivers because I felt that way. I felt where my husband didn't care about me. Well, my father never cared about me. He always thought my older sister was prettier and better and so on. You know, where my wife thinks I'm this. My friends in school, no one respected me. People ignored me. I was invisible at a party or a gathering, right? So that's the part that people connect to. There. It doesn't matter that Jesus explains, we are told, exactly what's going to happen to him. Moreover, I would just say this. If he knew that he was going to suffer and die and then remain in paradise for the weekend, I mean, look at Luke. As I told you, Luke has no passion in it. Luke even has a lucid conversation with one of the criminals and says to him, you're going to be with paradise with me today, and reassures him. And says to God, forgive them because they don't know what they're doing. You would never find that in Mark. It's so different. It's not different that the words are different. It's a totally different Jesus. And that is also good. That also delivers that kind of drug. People smoke a cigarette and that delivers a high, a certain whatever it gives, and they have a shot of vodka or scotch, or I don't even know the difference between them. Whiskey. I don't know why people drink this stuff. I'm not trying to be cute here. I don't know. I understand like people enjoy a glass of wine. I never understood strong drinks. It's just me, and I'm very grateful that I don't understand it. But people are getting something out of it. They put a glass down on the bar. Give me a double, right? And I'll tell you a funny story. When I was a child, is a very early memory. I don't know how old I was. After the synagogue service, the all the men would gather and they have kiddush. They would drink a little whiskey and have a little piece of cake. I'm not kidding. I was a little boy. I don't know how old I was, but I remember looking at my grandfather. He was and all the men did. And my grandfather was holding this drink. I don't know what it was, but it had the color of apple juice. And I said, Zadie, can I taste it? And he, without blinking, he handed me a schnapps glass, and I put it to my mouth and just tasted it, and I spit it out. It was the most horrible thing, gave back to him, and that cured me of drinking. I mean, it was repulsive. So the point is that people want this, they get this. The New Testament is a panoply of highs. And one of them is that, look at Jesus. He doesn't know why his enemies hurt him. And I don't know why my wife hurts me every day. That's what it is. And it doesn't have to agree with other parts of the Gospels which portray Jesus. And number two is, frankly, what are you so upset about? If we are all worried about sickness and illness, we're all concerned because we know of people who are very, very sick, and we know at any moment something terrible can happen, and we worry. It's like walking through a minefield, right? It's a very frightening thing of not knowing. Well, Jesus didn't know, so that's attractive. Whatever you want salty, you want fatty, you want whatever you want, the Christian Bible delivers the high. The only thing the Torah says is, I know it feels good, but put out the cigarette because it's going to kill you. Not now. I know you're enjoying it now, but if you drink alcohol excessively, it's going to kill you. And it'll even kill you faster than cigarettes will. I know now you feel good, but it's going to kill you. So the cry of dereliction is it's a drink. Moreover, it doesn't even make sense. I mean, if you were offered the possibility, I know you're terrified of finding a lump. I know you're petrified of something going wrong where you have to go to the doctor and they're doing a biopsy, right? If I told you that I got a deal for you, you get crucified on Friday, no doubt will be the worst afternoon of your life, but you spend the weekend in paradise, you resurrect on Sunday and live forever and never get sick again, never get old. Who wouldn't do it? Jesus won the lottery. The story doesn't even make sense. Like, if you die without any knowledge that you're going to live forever and resurrect on Sunday, that's nothing. You're getting a refund. That's winning the lottery. Who wouldn't do that? Who wouldn't be executed on Friday if you were sure that you're going to resurrect on Sunday and never get old again and never get sick again? The whole story doesn't make sense, but it really is a Seinfeld episode. It doesn't matter if it makes sense. It just has to deliver the high now. And the Torah is saying, I know you want to get high. I know you want pleasure in life. Just don't go for the short-term pleasure. Go for the long-term pleasure, the eternal pleasure. Not that one puff is very pleasurable, I'm sure. That drink, whatever reason, people drink vodka, whatever, they enjoy it. I have a friend who loves different kinds of malts. I don't even know what that even means. He gets a kick out of it. I'm very grateful. I have no desire for it. The Torah is simply saying, stay focused on the Torah because it will give you the long-term pleasure. It's not the short-term high that Christianity gives. So Mark 15, the cry of dereliction is there to give you the high at that moment to make you so that it would enjoin you to identify with Jesus, who feels hopeless. After all, you have felt hopeless too, but he rises from the dead. Thank you for your question.
Yep, very good. That was nice. Okay, this will probably be our last caller. Caller, you're live on the air.
Yes, it will.
Please tell us your name and where you're calling from.
Hello?
Yes, you're live on the air. Go ahead.
Okay. My name is Ethan. I'm calling from Boston.
Welcome.
So I was watching a Jewish missionary who shares my name talk about this thing called Tikkun Sofrim. Supposedly there were some edits made by the later Masoretic texts that differ from original Qumran texts. One example he gave was of Psalm 22:16, how the word Ke'aryeh, like lions, the yud at the end was originally a vav, so it's stayed pierced instead of like lions. So I'm wondering what the story is with that.
Okay, very good.
Hey, let me ask you a question.
Yep.
This is our last caller.
Mm-hmm.
Did you ever bother asking this guy, could you show me evidence that Psalm 22, verse 16 was part of any amendation made by scribes?
Well, this was on a YouTube video, so I couldn't ask him.
All right, so I'm just saying this. So, like, all you have to do is say, please show me the evidence. Really. It's all you have to do. Don't be afraid. You've got the truth. You don't have to be afraid, right? People are used to denying every aspect of Jewish history. History that occurred 4 months ago, denied. History that occurred 85 years ago, denied. History that occurred 3,300 years ago, denied. They just say Jewish history never happened. So thank you very much for your question.
Go ahead and hang them down to the answer. Thank you. I think you covered this in your books, didn't you?
I covered it, but it's just not there. It is not in the Dead Sea Scrolls that it would read, they pierced my hands and feet. It's just not there. And it's made up. It's completely made up. And these missionaries just say things that are just not there. And there are Christian missionaries who are involved in the Dead Sea Scrolls who just are playing games. And is it the opening chapter? I showed the manuscript, and it's not in Qumran at all. And it has nothing to do with Tikkun Sofrim. It's all, what it is it's just noise. Like they throw 100 darts at a wall, and they hope that one of them hits the target. That's really what it is. I'm not going to go into whole speech on Tikkun Sofrim, but there are passages that scribes adjusted. So, for instance, when Job's wife says, "Why don't you be a man, curse God, and die?" Or whatever, text like that. So the Sofrim did not want the word curse and the one God to be in the same passage. But Psalm 22, verse 17 in the Hebrew Bible, 16 in the Christian Bible is not among them. And people, the missionaries who are just want to convert Jews to Christianity, say it, and you are a Jew, and you're going, well, I don't know. Because I think we are used to people who say, especially if they're not, especially if they have a doctor in front of their name, then they must be telling the truth. Well, no, it's nonsense. There is no such thing. And so it's not from Tikkun Sofrim, which are, let's say, 17 amendations. There's an argument whether it really is or there weren't. I don't want to but it's not Psalm 22. So they conflate all these things and they create so much. This is just pure smoke and mirrors. Show me evidence that this was. So you're gonna say Dead Sea Scrolls. So I'm not trying to sell books. You guys know that, but I do cover this. I show an enhanced manuscript from TaNaCh. The TaNaCh is not as old as Qumran. TaNaCh scrolls are from the period between the wars. It's not old like 1st, 2nd century BC, which is Qumran. TaNaCh is an area between the wars, so it's younger, and it's about 30 kilometers from Qumran. So there is a text that Christians, if you saw the manuscript itself, which is very sloppy, you would not be able to read it. Their claim is the word ko'ari means like a lion. Okay? The yud and the vav are two Hebrew letters that are most similar because the yud is sort of suspended in the air. That's that small letter. But if you take the yud and pull the bottom down to pull it down to the bottom, it could be a vav. So if you look at a manuscript, it's so hard to see that they enhance it. What do? They took a magic marker and they put a vav there. And I show it. So if you actually see what the scroll originally looked like, you would go, whoa, you can't even read it. So what they're saying is it really said ka'aru with a vav at the end instead of ka'ari with a yud at the end. So ka'ari, everyone admits, means like a lion. Ka'aru, they say, means pierced, if there's a vav there, which is stupid. Sorry. It's not true. There is no such word as ka'aru. There's a word karu. So you not only have to turn the yud into a vav, but you have to turn the aleph into a microwave oven. It's just complete. It's a sham. It's a scam. There is no such word as karu in TaNaCh. There is a word karu, which means to dig or to excavate, to lower. Not use one is a pierced in Hebrew. That's not the word you would use, even if you turn the aleph into a microwave oven and turn the yud into a washing machine. Even if you did all that, you'd still have all your work ahead of you. Dakar means to stay, nakev means to stay. Karu doesn't mean anything because there's an aleph there. This is such garbage in, garbage out. And I wrote to the people who originally peddled in this. They won't write me back. It's all fake. So there's no Tikkun Sofrim involved in this. There is a text. And I'll tell you this. Really, you can go to Google Images. If you go to Google Images and look up this TaNaCh cave fragment, and is it section? It's PS 59/11, something like that. Something like that. Okay, I'm not sure I have it. 5911. So there are two versions you'll see. One is an actual photograph of what it looks like. And I assure you, if you look at it, you go, I don't even know what they're talking about because I can't even read it. This is not like you're looking at a Sefer Torah. It's all blurred out. And then they have an enhanced version. And the enhanced version, you can imagine, like the way the Christians have it. Not kidding. Not kidding. But it's also poorly written. When I say poorly, it's not a uniform scroll, which each letter is the same size. It's just all over the place. Yeah, big letters, small letters. I'm not complaining about the poor guy writing this 2,000 years ago in the middle of a desert. Maybe he'd do a better job than me. I don't know. The thing had to survive nearly 2,000 years. But he had poor handwriting. It just is all over the place. You have letters big and small. Moreover, as I show in volume 2 of Let's Get Biblical, I show that the next word should say Yodai, Yud, Dalad, Yud, and whoever did this poor soul who wrote this, that you can see, he put a hey, he misspelled it. I'm not kidding. Look it up for yourself. He misspelled the next word. The next word is Yud, Dalad, Yud, Hey, which is wrong. That's Yodeha, which means her hands. Hello, hello. And that's what's going on. So, magic shows are fun. I don't know. I guess they're fun. You walk in, you sit down, and the magician does a shtick, and it's fine. But at least the guy is not really doing magic. He's not suspending the laws of physics for your entertainment. The laws of thermodynamics are completely intact, and things do not levitate. Forget that. Okay. Do you want to figure out how he did it? Some people do. And you know what this is like? There are YouTube videos which actually expose how magic tricks are done. And I've watched a few of those. Sometimes it's 1 o'clock in the morning. All right, whenever you do video, this is how he did it. Right? You ever watch those? And you go, so after you watch the expose videos, I'm sure magicians hate that these videos exist, and you see how the magician did the trick, it's really a downer because, oh, that was stupid. Why didn't I think of that? That's all that's going on here. These are all props. It's all fake. It's all phony. It's all a game. And the missionaries listen, Herzechain, listen very carefully. The church is making a fantastic claim. And the claim is, I can prove to you from your Old Testament that Jesus is the Messiah from your Bible. And then you go, okay, let's take a look. From your Hebrew Bible, hundreds of prophecies. Okay, let's take a look. And then you go look at it, and it's not there. And then you start getting these long, convoluted, torturous speeches that there's a Tikkun Sofrim with a Dead Sea Scroll thing, and the rabbi, whoa. When I read the advertisement, that wasn't in the ad. The ad wasn't that your text doesn't say it. And that's all this is a game. So say, please produce it. Show me a text that has it. And I have a feeling, I think you introduce yourself as someone who's an Orthodox Jew, which means you read Hebrew. Please go look at it for yourself and see that you cannot tell. It looks more like a Yud than a Vav to me. But the truth is, the letters are not uniform. There's not like a Torah scroll in your synagogue where every letter is perfect. Not all, but many of the scrolls in the Qumran, the famous ones like the Isaiah scroll, are fairly uniform. The scribes who put it together really worked hard. This is just a mess. In handwriting, it's all over the place, riddled with errors. So really, it's not a misspelling. He wrote a Yud, and it's so blurry that you can't even tell. So I tell you this, if you want to wind up in that religion, keep listening to these conspiracy theories. Make, just like you would ensure that the people you do business with and you buy merchandise from deliver on what is promised, and that's why you paid That's why you gave me a credit card. And you will ask for a refund if what shows up at your door is not what was advertised. Do the same thing with missionaries. I mean, al achas kama v'kama, if you care enough to send back a merchandise that was misrepresented by a dealer on Amazon and get a refund, how much more so? That's only you losing $150. This is your neshama, this is your eternal life. How much more so should you demand a refund from these missionaries who are trying to rob you of a relation with God? But days are coming that all the nations will speak in a pure speech. Knowledge will cover the world as the water covers the sea. And all these fake salesmen for Christianity will be done away with. All the false prophets. See Zechariah 13, verses 1 through 6. Please, God, we will witness this redemption quickly in our time. Thank you for your question. William, great show.
Guys, if you want to find his books or actually, if you want to get the books, get them from the link below if you don't mind. That'd be great in the video description area. But if you haven't gotten the audio files, I've shown you right here. Click the free audio tab on his website, outreachjudaism.org. And when you open that up, you'll see all these titles of what appears to be the titles of the books, just because they are. This is not an audio book. This is the first series of lectures that Rabbi did, and he turned them into the books. So the books has all the extra juicy information. This was where it began. So if you're studying the books without these audio files, you really are missing out. And also, don't forget to go to this link here, support our work. That's Rabbi Singer's website personally, and this is where you can donate directly to him at any time you like. And Rabbi, once again, thank you so much for your time, and it's been a great show as usual, and we look forward to seeing you same time, same place next week, Hashem willing. Y'all have a great week. Take care. Peace, everybody.
Shalom, my dear friends. Hope this message finds you well. If you like the way this channel is going, and the channel has been a blessing to you, please consider supporting the channel by going to the website, TaNaChTalk.com, TaNaChTalk.com. Thank you once again for your time and for supporting TaNaCh Talk. Shalom.
תמיד כולם ביחד, חשוב מכל חשוב והכרחי להיות ביחד. איפוק זו העוצמה, ויתור זו הגדולה, השאיפה